Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this early look at the Silence and the Fury DLC. It's going to be Lizardmen facing off against Vampire Coast Coatl, taking it to the double gunnery white. So let's go ahead and break down the build. We have a lot of new elements, a really cool strategy for the dinos here that I'd like to share with you all. Now, as far as the build goes, the entire front line is going to be Chameleon Stalkers. So these are the new infantry units here in the DLC. And they're pretty interesting. They have really high melee defense for their price point. They do also have physical resist. So against very low DPS units like deckhand mobs and most Vampire Coast infantry, I felt like they'd be a nice niche. On top of that, they do have 2 ranged attacks. However, you can't control them. Basically, when you give a charge order to the Chameleon Stalkers and they get in range of said target, that's when they then unleash the volley. So it's a little bit awkward compared to like javelins and things like that, but still has a little bit of damage. In the secondary line, we got Chameleon Skinks. Coatl, I think, is actually going to be super good against Vampire Coast with the Master Ambusher ability, which we'll be using for most of this game here, or the Master Predator, I should say. He is unspottable. So basically what you do is you just sit him behind your second line, you just shoot at big targets like Luther Harkin, like the Gallows Giant, like Gunnery Whites, and he has massive armor piercing. You know, he's seen some stuff in the realm of chaos, so he's ready to unleash that fury here onto the Vampire Coast. Now for the rest of the army, this is hands down my favorite aspect of the DLC here for the dinos. We have the Coatl. So the Coatl basically has an aura, which everything underneath it gets the stock ability. So what you do against Vampire Coast are artillery factions in which you normally couldn't bring big dinosaurs without a huge liability. He's bring the Coatl up in the sky here, and you give them all stock. So the Bastillodon is stalking, this other one is, as is the Skink Oracle. So the Skink Oracle, it's also a new character. It is basically a caster that is riding on a Troglodyte. However, you can only bring him on the Troglodyte. So you can't bring him on, foot or any other variant. So, it's a big investment, but he's quite good. He has a Wind Blast. He does also Fireball and Earthblood. So a really nice caster. And I have to say, guys, the Troglodyte's anti-large capabilities are absolutely insane. They hit so damn hard. You'll get a chance to see him in action here this game against the Gallows Giant. But again, it's also a big target. So Dov over here does have a Carronade. He's got double Gunnery Whites, which is very, very competitive, right? Incredibly strong at sniping down targets like this. So a little bit of scary action going on here, but this is it for my army. The Coatl going to be escorting up the Troglodyte Skink Oracle with his ranged attacks. The only Lizardman DLC unit we don't have here, I think we actually have them all. Yes, we have the Troglodyte, we have the Coatl, we do also have the Chameleon Stalkers. So for Vampire Coast, the legendary Dov plays Zombie Pirate Deckhand Mob Polearms. In the front line, mostly chaff. He has a cannon. Pistol mobs in the back, pretty good. Only 300 gold, and they can shoot at Pterodon Riders and a lot of things. Most Lizardman players are a little bit too afraid to bring big, heavy armor against Coast. But, if you can hide it until you get really close, maybe it's going to be a little bit stronger. Who knows? The Zombie Pirate Gunnery Mobs here. We do also have the Carronade, and over in the bushes, it is going to be the Gunnery White with the pistol, teamed up with double Gunnery Whites with the long rifles. So what's really scary about this is the extra powder, so they can just feed each other extra powder the entire game and really get some nasty value. It's also very strong, of course, as you've seen in my big tournaments with the Deck Choppers. But in this matchup, I think it's probably, Deck Choppers could be okay, but with the Chameleon Skinks and Coatl being a thing, also we do have the new Coatl here flying in the air to chase them down, we can get some big damage. So, the Monster Squad moving out, the Monstars. Little Space Jam action. We have the Skink Oracle and the 2 Feral Bastillodons creeping up, and you can see the aura. Everything here has stock. So currently, Dov cannot really see anything in my army except the Coatl, and he can shoot it with a cannon, but with good micro, of course, which I probably won't have here in a second, you can dodge the shots, relatively effectively. You just have to be careful to make sure that the aura is going to be staying over the units. But this is already pretty big value, right? Firstly, your opponent doesn't know what's coming. And secondly, big dinos, like my Oracle, for example, if it were to be focused by, the cannon, or if Dov had brought 2 cannons, which isn't uncommon in matchups like this, I could have been, almost losing a big expensive piece right away. So here come the Stalkers. You guys will be seeing the charge orders here in a second. We'll be witnessing the first of their fire salvos. I think they're called the Precursor Missile Weapons. Yes, that's what it says in the tooltip. Here they come. Missile attacks should be going in any second. The first volley goes down, and honestly, that is pretty damn good against light armor. Look at that. That's solid. It's like an instant speed blasting charge. Now, Dov did also have 4 scurvy dogs in the bushes here, and this is a really good tactic. These skinks are pretty durable, but they still are skinks at the end of the day with only 40 armor, so the dogs kind of flanking and swarming on my Chameleon Stalkers is going to be able to bring them down rather fast. Now back in the epicenter of combat, my Coatl is being focused down by a lot of fire, but now the Bastillodons, the ambush is sprung, and here they come. The Bastillodons are charging forward, and on the other side of the battlefield, the Troglodyte is shooting its ranged attacks into the Gallows Giant, doing some big damage. So here comes the Fireball as well, unleashing a salvo fire, but I gotta be careful. I'm taking cannon fire, a bunch of handgun fire. Both Gunnery Whites are also shooting against the Skink Oracle here, but the poison attacks should be going out in a second. Casting an Earthblood here, a little bit of sloppy control here, letting the Oracle take damage, but he's very fast. He does have 75 speed, so I should be able to remaneuver. while Oxyotl, with the Master Predator popped, does have the range increase, is shooting downtown and just blasting at the Gallows Giant, which is also being attacked by my Flying Beastie, the Coatl. Pretty good at, gooning these type of targets, right? We have the Gunnery Wights, a lot of stuff that we really do want to be taking out here. On the far side of the battlefield, Scurvy Dogs lining up, but my Chameleon Stalkers have disengaged from the front line and have now started to pursue the Doggos. In straight combat, the Stalkers will win that quite decisively, but I have to watch out. The Admiral coming after the Coatl, and they're not the best in combat. I mean, they're okay. Their combat stats right now are 40 and 48, but the Gunnery Wight beating on it is not going to be a favorable situation. The Skink Oracle has also escaped once again, basically just using him to heal in the backfield, dropping the Earthblood right there on top of himself. Taking a lot of cannon fire, but the Troglodons are not bad in melee either. They do have that poison. Poison has been nerfed in this patch, so it's a little bit less effective. I believe it's 15% on these stat reductions. It was way worse before, but I think it's a reasonable change. Poison was quite strong indeed. Wind Blast going down from the Skink Oracle on top of the Scurvy Dogs, while the Stalkers continue fighting in the front line, and the Coatl up in the sky just hunting down its prey. But there, Oxyotl, the Dreadlord himself, was able to actually finish off his prey. Now he's going to be loading up his Blow Dart again and starting to go after the Gunnery Wight here, although it looks like he did hit the hill a little bit, so slightly unfortunate there. The balance bar is pretty even. My dinos are quite damaged. Here, the Skink Oracle is down to about 40%. The Coatl is a little bit beat up, but I do have my Stalkers still fighting in the pits and honestly doing pretty damn good. They've been fighting against multiple units at once, taking gunfire, and still able to accrue a couple hundred value. They don't cost much more than that, so not the worst thing in the world. And the Bastillodon's being disrupted, right? I just send one back here. It's been able to kind of pressure the cannon. Granted, Zob did rampage it in halberds, which is a nice play on his part, but the other one has been able to single-handedly take out these units. And the Stalkers in the front, unimpeded, do decisively defeat the deckhand mobs. Looking around the rest of the battlefield, the Oracle has come back, shooting its poison dart here at the Doggos. Not going to do too much. It's pretty poor with its ranged attacks against some of the smaller threats in the battlefield. We do pop Cold Blood. I know that if I lose the Skink Oracle, I'm probably going to lose the game. Balance of power is in Dov's favor, and he still does have a very scary goon squad. But this is where the Oxyotl as well as the Troglodon really shine. Look at the damage coming in. Big burst damage from the Troglodon. Another shot pounding into the Gunnery Wight, while Oxyotl dropping those massive armor-piercing blow darts. Don't ask questions. It just has a ton of armor piercing, which makes sense since he's kind of the bane of chaos. But suddenly a game that was, pretty close in terms of the balance of power is now going further and further into the favor of the dinos. Now, historically, dinos had some anti-large via Carnosaurs, and look at the Troglodon charging in there. That's so badass looking, such a cool creature. It really looks like the, remember the Jurassic World where they have like the genetically modified T-Rex, basically? It kind of looks like that. Very, very neat stuff. But it's able to beat down the Gunnery Wight. Oxyotl going in for the kill. He's got some cool attacks and not great armor piercing in melee. And I'm not sure if he uses his blow dart as well as his melee attack, but the Gunnery Wight does fall. And now Vampire Coast running a little bit bare bones on resources while the Troglodon charges the cannon. Pretty much the only thing here that can threaten it. So we need to take that out ASAP. Vampire Coast still does have a fair amount of gun pieces. We have the Gunnery mobs. The Admiral is still going strong, but Oxyotl should be able to actually outduel this character. He's got a high ammunition pool, which makes sense. He's a glass cannon for sure. If he were to get attacked by any of these characters in melee for a prolonged period of time, he might hold his own due to the poison, but generally he's not going to be terribly efficient. Like anything with anti-infantry, like a chariot type character, kills him very, very quickly. But here he's able to shoot at the Admiral, getting some okay armor piercing, but the Opal Amulet from Dob plays very, very good usage there. Able to mitigate 20% of that damage there, but Oxyotl trying his best. And then the Coatl has given stock to the Skink Oracle, but it is shooting here, so it's going to be revealed. And the damage from the Oracle is very, very nice. I think that the Troglodon shooting, though they are glass cannons, you saw how quickly it almost died in the beginning. It does an insane amount of damage. Like right there, just bursting right through that Vampire Fleet Admiral. So it really is a glass cannon. I think with the Bare Bones kit I brought, it was almost like 2,500 gold. So it's almost like investing in a Dread Saurian, right? And Dread Saurians, of course, have that prowess in melee, but the Troglodon and the Skink Oracle, I think, are going to be very good in a number of matchups. In matchups in which you face off against Powder, it's very risky. Today it worked okay in this fight, simply because we did have the Coatl kind of escorting it and protecting it on the way in. But normally without that protection, cannons, different things like that could be very nasty. But overall, I really do enjoy the new Lizardmen units. The Chameleon Stalkers are, kind of neat, interesting. They can get blasted down by bombers, and if there's like high DPS infantry, they can still cut through them very quickly. But it's cool to have some variance in something in between Saurus and Skink cohorts, right? Which I think is great. Oxyotl's an absolute beast. I really do think he's going to be used in a ton of builds. He's really cheap. He can snipe while being hidden, and he's elusive, man. He's slippery. 2,300 value on him. The Oracle did great because the Oracle was able to accrue consistent anti-large damage on top of the on top of the Necrofex Colossus. From there, I was able to goon the Gunnery Wights, and it got a huge Wind Blast on like 3 or 4 units of Scurvy Dogs, probably accruing close to 800 value from that Wind Blast alone. But I really do like the Troglodyns. The Feral ones, I've tried them a little bit, but personally, I really like the Skink Oracle if you're going to go Troglodon, because it's got a crazy good combined lore of magic, and on top of that, it doesn't rampage. The other one like would have rampaged there, and I could have cold-blooded it out, but I only had, you know, 1 cold blood here on the battlefield. You'll generally have 2, but still, that's a liability, right? Because then if you miss it for a second, it runs in, gets rampaged, and, you know, beaten down before you can escape with it. It's a little dicey. The Coatl actually did okay, 1500, but it did escort in the Bastillodons, which are basically just distraction Carnifexes. They're not there to do damage. They're just a presence that has a lot of HP and armor that your opponent has to deal with. But overall, very excited to be playing Lizardmen post-patch. I think there's going to be tons of crazy plays with the Oxyotl. The Coatl is a little bit more of a niche. I think, you know, there are some gimmicks you can pull off with it, but it's kind of a, I don't know. Yeah, I'm trying to think about it. I do like it. I do like it. I'm not in love with it, but I do like it. And the Skink Oracle, as well as the Troglodons, probably my favorite in tandem with Oxyotl for the Lizardman side of things. Anyways, well played to Dov. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this game. If you haven't seen Dov's channel, make sure to check him out over on old YouTube. We've been playing a ton of games together here in this early patch here, and it's been a lot of fun. So big shout out to Dov for playing all these games. That's it for now, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed seeing Oxyotl and the Coatl and the Skink Oracle in action, and we'll be back with more Lizard and Beastman content soon. Take care, my friends.